When we talk about funding our schools, it often feels like a broken record, doesn't it?
It really does.
The refrain is always the same. Schools need more money, and, well, the only answer seems to be raising taxes.
Right. That's the default.
But imagine if a school district was seriously exploring a completely different playbook. What if they could potentially increase their funding without asking taxpayers for another dime?
And that's the really intriguing scenario we're unpacking today. Our source is a post from a Redbank Valley School Board member, Kevin D. Johnson.
Yeah.
And it's not just, hypothetical talk. We're looking at a real proposal, something actually taking shape.
Exactly. So for you tuning in, our goal here is to really understand Johnson's thought process. How is this board member trying to find, well, innovative solutions to boost funding, solutions that could maybe benefit both the students and the community's finances? We want to cut through the noise, get to the core insights without getting bogged down.
Okay, so maybe let's start by looking at the conventional approach, the usual way people think about school funding.
Good idea.
Johnson points out this prevalent feeling among districts, almost like an expectation that they're entitled to raise taxes when needs pop up.
Entitled, huh?
Yeah. And he mentions the influence of organizations like the Pennsylvania School Board Association, the PSBA.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them.
They often advocate for, pretty standardized approaches across the state. And Redbank Valley pays nearly $6,000 a year to be a member.
$6,000, wow. And Johnson suggests that the PSBA, maybe along with the district's own lawyer, their solicitor, they tend to promote this very uniform way of thinking about school finance, often just aligning with whatever the state priorities are.
It's like there's a well-worn path,
Yeah.
and the expectation is just follow it.
Right. Don't rock the boat.
But what's really interesting here is Johnson's conscious decision to, well, not follow that path. He emphasizes the importance of local control, their community's specific values, and, crucially, the need for innovative thinking.
Which is refreshing.
Definitely. He even mentions using AI, artificial intelligence, to explore alternative solutions. That's pretty forward-thinking for a school board member, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Instead of just accepting the status quo, he's actively looking for other ways. And, it's important to think about the context he's working in.
Sure.
Johnson touches on the basic education funding, or BEF, in Pennsylvania. He notes that the current method for distributing these funds, well, it's actually been declared unconstitutional by the courts.
That's a huge point to understand.
Yeah.
So the very system that dictates how state money gets allocated, it has this shaky legal foundation.
But it's still the one they use.
Exactly. It remains the auto system, or, the current operating system, as Johnson puts it. BEF is basically the Department of Education's formula for deciding who gets how much state money.
Okay. And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Johnson explains that part of a district's BEF funding is linked to their local financial contribution.
The local share.
Right. And the story we usually hear is if you need more state money, well, you got to raise local taxes. Only way.
And Johnson just directly challenges that. He argues that, yeah, okay, the local tax contribution is a factor in the BEF formula, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. He suggests there are other levers inside this formula that districts often overlook.
Okay, so if it's not just about raising taxes, what else is influencing that local contribution part of the BEF?
Well, this is kind of the key aha moment, maybe. Johnson points out that the level of a district's local contribution, as the BEF formula calculates it, it's also influenced by how much they spend on specific programs, particularly programs for students dealing with poverty and those learning English as a second language.
Okay, so not just the overall tax level, but targeted spending.
Exactly. So if a school board strategically decides, okay, let's put more resources into these specific programs, that could potentially increase their calculated local contribution in the formula without hitting everyone with a tax hike. It's about using existing funds smarter to also help their state funding picture.
Okay, that makes sense. And this ties right into what Johnson sees as a potentially underused resource, right? Redbank Valley's general fund balance.
Yes, exactly. He describes it as very high. We're talking around $6 million in a budget of about $23 million for the upcoming 2025-26 school year.
6 million out of 23, that's a pretty big cushion.
It's substantial, roughly 25% of their total budget, a really significant reserve.
And what's his take on where that money came from?
Well, the way Johnson frames it, he asserts that this large balance built up because of excessive taxation in past years.
So his argument is this is basically taxpayer money they already collected, maybe more than they needed at the time.
That seems to be his point. Therefore, this pool of money, in his view, already belongs to the taxpayers.
Okay, and that leads us right to the core of his this innovative proposal then.
Right. Johnson's central idea is, let's strategically use a portion of this existing general fund balance.
The $6 million.
A part of it, yeah. Use it to increase that local contribution figure within the BEF formula.
And the crucial part is no new taxes.
That's the hook. No new taxes imposed on the community. He sees it as a way to kickstart what he calls a self-reinforcing funding cycle.
A self-reinforcing cycle. Okay, let's dig into the details of that, this accelerated BEF funding strategy. How does it actually work?
Okay. So as Johnson lays it out, the plan involves making some upfront investments using money from that general fund balance.
Right.
But importantly, while still keeping a healthy fiscal reserve, he specifically mentions staying above at least 16%, which lines up with recommendations from GAS, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. They set the standards for state and local government accounting.
Yeah.
So maintaining a responsible reserve.
Got it. So use some, but not all, and keep a safety net.
Precisely. And these investments, they aren't just random. They're specifically targeted
Towards
those programs we just talked about, supporting students in acute poverty and English language learners.
because they have that higher weight in the formula.
Exactly. That 0.6 weighting for both categories is pretty significant in the BEF math. So by investing there, the district potentially maximizes the positive impact on their BEF calculation.
Makes sense. Is it a one-time thing?
No, and that's key. The strategy is designed to be ongoing. Johnson proposes reinvesting a portion of the increased BEF funding they get each year back into the strategy.
Ah, okay. So it's like a financial flywheel, kind of.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. An initial investment leads to more state funding, and then some of that new funding gets plowed back in to accelerate the cycle even more.
Interesting. Does he have projections? Like how much money are we talking about?
He does. He projects investing over $3 million over 5 years. That includes the initial allocations from the fund balance and the subsequent reinvestments, starting in the 2026-27 school year.
3 million plus.
Okay? And it's planned as a phased approach. He suggests gradually decreasing the amount pulled from the general fund each year,
Okay.
while increasing the amount that's reinvested from the growing BEF money. The idea is to make it more sustainable long-term.
Right. So it eventually feeds itself more and relies less on the initial reserve.
That seems to be the goal.
So what about the bottom line, the potential results? Are they significant?
Well, the projections are quite striking, actually. Johnson anticipates their annual BEF funding could increase from about $10.05 million currently to a projected $11.41 million by the 2030-31 school year.
Wow. Okay, that's over $1 million increase per year by then.
It's a substantial jump in state support.
Yeah.
And if you look at the cumulative effect over those 5 years,
It's a total extra money.
he projects generating an additional $2.34 million in funding compared to sticking with the status quo.
2.3 million extra. That's real money.
It certainly is. But maybe one of the most compelling projections is the impact on their growth rate.
How so?
He anticipates establishing a sustainable annual growth rate in BEF funding of about 4.09% by 2030-31,
Compared to what now?
compared to their current rate, which he states is only about 0.60%.
Okay, that's a huge difference, from less than 1% growth to over 4%.
Yeah. And just to really highlight it, he points out that in that 2030-31 school year alone, the district could get over $1 million more in state funding than they would otherwise.
Just in that single year.
Just in that 1 year.
And crucially, you said this is all projected while staying above that recommended reserve level.
That's right. According to Johnson's projections, they achieve this without dipping below that 16% strategic reserve in the general fund.
So it really is about using what they already have, just
No.
differently, more strategic.
That's the core argument. It's about employing existing resources much more effectively.
Which brings us right back to Johnson's pretty direct statement on this. What was it again?
He puts it very plainly. We just need to manage the millions we already have better and don't need to raise taxes.
That's a direct challenge to the usual narrative, isn't it?
It absolutely is. A clear challenge to conventional wisdom on school funding.
So let's try to wrap this up. To recap our deep dive here, the central insight seems to be the potential for schools to maybe optimize their funding through smarter resource management.
Right. Instead of automatically defaulting to tax increases, looking inward first. In this case, strategically leveraging that existing general fund balance.
And for me, the real aha moment, the thing that clicks, is understanding that direct link, how consciously putting money into specific student support programs.
Like for poverty or English
Yeah,
learners.
how that can actually influence the state's BEF formula in their favor. It's definitely a more nuanced picture than just saying local taxes dictate state aid.
Exactly. It shows there can be other factors at play within these complex formulas.
And for you listening, especially if you're looking to, get useful insights quickly without getting overwhelmed, this example shows a genuinely creative approach.
Tackling a tough financial challenge by thinking outside the standard box.
It really underscores the value of questioning those established norms, right? Looking for alternatives.
Absolutely.
So here's maybe a final thought to leave you with. If one school district is exploring this kind of model, optimizing existing money to boost funding, could this work elsewhere?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Could other districts with maybe similar fund balances or facing similar pressures adopt something like this? And maybe even thinking broader, are there other areas in public finance where these kinds of long-held assumptions,
Like we always need more taxes.
right, where those assumptions might be worth reevaluating? Could we find more effective, maybe more taxpayer-friendly solutions if we just looked at the resources we already have, but with fresh eyes?
Definitely something to ponder. What other entrenched ideas are out there waiting to be challenged?